So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Diana Wheeler, and she will give us the details.
Thank you all for coming out. It's a real pleasure to be able to come and share some thoughts with you this evening about this particular project that we've been working on for almost 2 years. If we could go to the next slide, please. And we know that we're talking about the property here across from the Forum, and you'll see, and I'm going to use my little pointer, that we're talking about Peachtree Parkway here, and then Medlock Bridge over here. Right, doing on this side, Peachtree Parkway, and then Medlock Bridge, 20 acres across from the Forum. And before I tell you where we are, I think it'd be good to talk about where we've been. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. And we start at the beginning, and in this case with a little story, and this is really my beginning, with the city of Peachtree Corners, and it starts basically the first week I was on the job, which was August of 2012. And at that, Lori's laughing because she's heard this story. At that first week that I was with the city, I met with the mayor. Mayor Mason and I spent some time together because I wanted to find out about this community. I was not familiar with Peachtree Corners. Of course, you know, it's only a month old, so not a whole lot of people were familiar with the city, as it were. And the mayor and I talked about what the vision for the future, and he shared with me his thoughts. And one of the things in particular that caught my attention was his vision for this property across from the Forum. He said this is the last remaining undeveloped piece of property, and we would love to have a town center there. Our new city doesn't really have a town center, and we'd like to have a place where there's a mix of uses, with a town green where people can come and we can have special events and activities, a place where there'd be entertainment and restaurants. And he painted this picture that I thought was really wonderful and really inspiring. And I thought, well, this is really, really great. I would love to see this happen. A few days later, I get a call from an engineer, and he said, I need your help with something. I'm working on a project, and I don't know what the permitting requirements are in Peachtree Corners. Do you think you can come by my office and help me with that? Because we have plans that are ready to submit, but we don't know, you don't have any forms, you don't have any applications, we don't know how to go ahead and submit this, and our client is very eager because as soon as we get the permit, they're going to start construction. So I said, sure, no problem, I'll come by your office. And I did. I came by the office for the engineer, and he laid out these plans, and he was right. It was pretty completely detailed out for this very large looking, what looked like an apartment project. And I said, I'm a little confused. I'm new to this city, so help orient me. Where is this exactly? And he said, well, right here is Peachtree Parkway, and this is Medlock Bridge Road. And I said, well, now I'm really confused, because that's the town center site, isn't it? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. My client has this project. He's got the property under contract, and all we need is a permit. We're going to build this project. Well, if his client had built this project, let's go to the next slide, please. This is what we would have across from the Forum. 267 apartments that laid out pretty much like that. And if you want to know what across the Forum would look like today, next slide please, that's what we'd all be looking at. So of course, after the meeting, the first thing I did, I got on the phone with the mayor, and I said, do you know about these apartments across from the Forum? And I quickly found out that nobody knew about the apartments across from the Forum. It was a very quiet, sort of hush-hush project they had been working on and hadn't really told anybody about it. They were getting ready to close on this. They just needed a permit. And of course, the city council had a big problem to deal with immediately. And the mayor said, well, let's see if we can hold on, and quickly called together the rest of the council, and they spent many evenings together trying to figure out how to solve this problem. What are they going to do? Can we go to the next slide, please? They knew that they didn't want, and the community didn't want, 267 apartments across from the Forum, but they didn't really know what their options were, so they had to start analyzing. And with the mayor's leadership and the council's diligence and the city attorney's help, they looked at the different options that were available. A lot of times, the council has some leverage with zoning, but in this particular case, the property was already zoned for apartments, so zoning was out as an option. Sometimes the city has the ability to use eminent domain to acquire property, but that's only for a public purpose, and this was a commercial piece of property, so that option was out, and that only really left one option, and that option was to purchase the property. So that created a whole nother set of problems. You think about the new cities that have been formed in recent years, Sandy Springs, Milton, Johns Creek, Dunwoody, all of these communities, 2 months after they get incorporated, they don't have to deal with issues like this. But it took an amazing amount of effort. The mayor says, they didn't know what they were doing. They did know what they were doing. They knew that they had to act quickly, and they had very limited options. So the next thing they did was to put together a game plan and come up with a to-do list. Next slide, please. And the to-do list, very quickly, the first thing had to happen was acquire financing. We had a lot of help from our city manager, Mr. Jackson, figuring out how to make that happen. Of course, establishing the Downtown Development Authority, because they actually had the authority to work on a commercial project, which the city didn't have, and Mr. Graveline explained all that. Then they had to purchase the property, put together a plan to retain a development partner, and then after that, they have to figure out what kind of a vision they had for their property. So let's go on to the next slide. Well, the vision included a mixed-use development. It's a lot of what the mayor had talked about originally. Mixed-use development with a town green where people could gather for special events. It involved having a place for performing arts, outdoor entertainment, plenty of parking. Next slide, please. It had to look like the Forum, because that's really about the aesthetics of that area of the community. There needed to be a way to get to the Forum. There had to be an opportunity to expand in the future. It needed to be a project that really created the focus for a town center within the community. So then after the vision was developed, if you'll go to the next slide, we had to start figuring out how to convert that vision into a design. What should the town square look like? How big should the buildings be? Where should the parking go? How does the residential fit in? All of these things had to be put together to try to figure out how to make it all happen into one cohesive design. So we started working with designers. If you go to the next slide, please. And they came up with some sort of sketchy ideas. Next slide, please. And those started turning into hardline ideas, some very specific things about how to put together, a mixed-use development in a way that works, understanding that the front of the property was already developed with Sprouts and some of that other retail, and there was property behind it that was privately owned, trying to figure out how to get all of that together. And what we realized as we started working on this, next slide please, is that in order for the city to be able to control some of it, there was a need for the city to retain some of this property, retain the green space so that it could control what would happen there, retain the parking so that everyone would have access to the parking and it would be public parking. Develop the roadways so that we could control the circulation and the access points. So if the city retained all of that, we were looking at keeping 8 acres. It would only be the commercial and the residential portions that would then be sold to a developer. Next slide, please. So then, the next thing that we have to do, share the vision, and that's what we're doing tonight. And you'll see in just a minute how this has evolved and what we're headed towards. And again, as Chairman Graveline said, this is not the final plan. It is the preliminary plan, but it's taken us a while to get here, and we're at that point now that we have enough to be able to show you in order to get a response back from you. So after we share the vision, then we want to go to the Planning Commission. We have our public hearings on our master plan, the City Council as well, and if all that works out, then we are going to be looking to sell the commercial residential portions of the property. And ultimately, we'll have to develop common area maintenance plans, things like that. Next slide, please. And after that, of course, we sell the property. We'll come up with a programming for the town center. That's where we want to have all of our events. And then we'll probably have to hire an events manager to oversee all of that. But you can see the timeline and the progression. Next slide, please. So, it seems like this has been going on for a while, but from a mixed-use development life cycle perspective, this is actually a very fast-moving project. And even though it's fast-moving, it's 5 years, assuming everything goes smoothly, it's 5 years in the making. From the time that the city started to the time that the property was purchased, you can see there's a lot of arrows on there. And we're now right here at this point where we're presenting this plan to the community. But you see there are a lot of steps to go. And if we're successful and everything goes smoothly, as I say, sometime around the mid-2017, it's going to be a project that we can all enjoy and appreciate at the grand opening. What's left now to do, as you can see, we've got a land sale. Construction has to begin. It takes 6 months to develop the plans. Pardon me. And after that, 1.5 years for construction to actually occur. So we've still got a ways to go in order to make this happen. And so now the next big thing that we have to deal with is the land sale. And you might say, all right, well, in terms of, you know, how this is progressing, how did we do for the land sale? If you'll go to the next slide, please. And I think this is an important concept to take away, that the City Council made an excellent deal. They had very limited time in which to get appraisal of the property and to be able to purchase the property, but at the end of the day, the developer that will buy the land to develop the commercial and the residential portions will pay the same dollar per square foot that the city paid for the land. Next slide, please. And so this is the concept that we're looking at this evening. And as you can see, Peachtree Parkway here, and this is the main entrance into the development. Can you all see on this one, or should I do both? You're all, okay. Peachtree Parkway, main entrance into the development. And then these are anticipated to be 2 standalone restaurants. This would be a building that has retail on the ground floor and offices above. Same on this side. There's parking over here. This would be a standalone building that's a 2-story restaurant with outdoor rooftop dining. Over here, we have, hidden behind all the buildings, is a 4-level parking deck with about 450 parking spaces. This is a cinema. We have a movie theater here. This is over 2 acres, and it is the town square. It's a green space. And the way it's shown here, not necessarily the ultimate finished product, but the way it's rendered here is with a splash pond and a clock tower. This is a place for the Performing Arts Center, and there's an opportunity for a restaurant here with outdoor dining. There's opportunity for expansion here. This is a creek that's existing on the property that could be used as a nature trail or open space. And over here are 45 townhomes. And that's the basic outline of the design concept. Now if you go to the next slide, if you're coming to the property, and you come in, you drive in over here, and you look in on this side, standing from this direction, this is what you would see. Next slide. So this traffic circle exists right now. If you've been to Sprouts or some of the other retail stores, you've driven around this traffic circle. And we envision a fountain here. This is the 2-story restaurant with the outdoor dining behind it. You see the clock tower in the back. Retail on the ground floor, office above. Next slide, please. Now, if you were at the park, looking into the park, down into the property, this is what you would see. And you see here there's a band shell for outdoor musical performances. This is the cinema, retail buildings. A little bit in the back, kind of peeking out there, is that parking deck, the splash pond, two-story restaurant with the outdoor dining. This is the Performing Arts Center with the restaurant, outdoor dining, and 2 acres, or more than 2 acres, for people to just enjoy, to have picnics, to recreate, for special events, festivals, all sorts of things. And that's really the vision for the park in the back, the town square, where we can all come together as a community. Next slide. So now what we want to do is ask you what you think. Now that you've seen it, what are your impressions? How do you feel about this? And do you like it? And if you'll go to the next slide, this is just to kind of give you an overview so you can kind of take a look at it.